Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Whiskey and Weird. I'm super excited. I do have an extra special guest with me again tonight, and that always makes it more fun for me. And I'm going to bring her on in just a second. But if you are just chiming in, we're going to be just chatting fun about conspiracy theories. Um, I couple weeks ago, someone I know, a friend, brought up how she went down a rabbit hole reading comments on a flat earther site or on a post about flat earthing. And we were just kind of chatting and admittedly laughing at some of the things that the flat earthers said. And ever since then, I'm like, oh, that could be really fun to talk about. And my guest tonight, she and I always have super awesome conversations about a lot of things. So I thought it'd be really fun. Not to mention, it's her birthday today. So when you're chiming in, saying hello, make sure you wish Jacqueline a happy birthday. But I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. I am going to taste a whiskey, but she can enjoy that moment with me too. So you guys, I'm going to welcome my sister Jacqueline to the stream right now. Everybody say hi. My sister. You can always see the resemblance that we are sisters, right, Jacqueline?
Sue said, I can't tell you apart. Now with our hair now, I like your haircut, by the way. That's super cute.
Thank you. Yeah, so perfect. Anyway, so we're gonna talk conspiracy theories, right? And I'm gonna first try my whiskey. I did get a new whiskey for tonight that I've been wanting to try for a few weeks. I noticed it, and but someone did chime in and say we of course should touch on what happened today with the UAP hearings and all the conspiracy theories that have been related to the whole idea of UFOs and the government hiding it from us. So we'll definitely be chatting about that. But first, let me get right to it. I found this whiskey. It's called the Snake River Stampede. This is a 6-year-old whiskey. It's bottled in Rose City, which is Portland, Oregon, by Rose City Distilling, Canadian style whiskey. But just like wine, I often find I'm drawn to the labels a little bit first, right? So it's kind of pretty. Jacqueline, you'll appreciate this. It's got horses on it. Jacqueline is a lover of horses. She used to ride when she was young, right, Jacqueline?
I did.
So, but yeah, you guys, if you're coming on right now, wish my sister Jacqueline a happy birthday. Today is her birthday, and she agreed to celebrate it with me a little bit. So I'm super excited about that. Make sure my my volume is all the way on. Okay. So let's see. First, smell it in the bottle. I do find it's a little harder to get a nose out of the bottle when they have these long necks. I guess that kind of makes sense, right? It's a little more, little farther for things to travel. So I'm going to put it in the bottle here, see if I can get a little bit of a nose from it. It's pretty color. I like that too. Jacqueline, you sent me a great one when I first started this show, and it was tucked away in storage because I had never finished it. So a few weeks ago, Jonas and I finished it, and it was really awesome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So this is 80 proof. It's got a pretty calm nose on it, a little bit of a burn there. You're getting a little of your typical kind of like caramely essence. A lot of whiskeys are that way. And Canadian whiskeys tend to be less floral and more sweet, I find, in my experience. I'm sure there's a bajillion people out there who would disagree with me, but it's got some legs on it too. I don't know if you guys, sorry, I'm really bad at putting this in front of my camera, especially because I'm using a different thing, but it's got some good legs on it. It really kind of sticks, which tells me it's probably going to stick to my tongue a little bit. But here we go. Let's see how it tastes. Mm-hmm. Ooh, there's definitely a sweetness, but it's got a split second of a good burn. Not all the way down. It's just like right when you, but it almost tastes like you could pour this over ice cream if you really like to do that.
So are
So it's
legs, are those are the streaks on the glass?
yeah, it's kind of like like even when you drink wine, when you say it has legs, it like really kind of sticks to
Okay.
the edge of the glass a lot.
Yep. Okay.
So, and that just kind of hints at the viscosity of it. And it does do that a little bit. You can kind of feel it on your tongue or whatever. But it's pretty good. It is sweet. This probably would be really good over ice. And it would mellow out that little burn, but also for me um the sweetness of it. And of course, when I say sweet, you would probably try it and be like, "Oh, this isn't sweet at all." For people who don't drink whiskey, right? But
Yeah, I need a point of reference.
anyway,
Right?
cheers to you, Jacqueline, on your birthday.
Thank you. Nice.
All right. So let's get down to some fun conversation, Jacqueline. First of all,
Okay.
when you Jonas says happy birthday. Uh, when you think conspiracy theories, what's the first one that comes to your mind?
The first one that comes to my mind,
Mm-hmm.
ones that I might not want to talk about, like
Ones that you
like
don't
more
want to
like more recent ones, like 5G and all of those. But that's getting into a political quagmire, I think.
Oh, well, you know what? And that's the interesting thing. I was thinking about conspiracy theories versus belief systems, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like
Oh, that's an
defining them
interesting idea.
because uh Jonas might chime. We were talking about aliens earlier, and he came up with this theory about aliens. He'll probably put it in the comment section, um,
Okay.
but I was like, conspiracy theories really are a lot about that. They are politically motivated, right? Or they're like there's always an agenda solidly behind them. Like
Yeah. Yep.
I can go all these things that I believe on this that I share on this show. I suppose you could use those as conspiracy theories if you want to go blame someone for the fact that we don't know the truth, or you know what I mean? But
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
But
it was funny because I actually, in a little bit of preparation, I looked up, I pulled up some, favorite conspiracy theories, and things like UAPs um, and even Sasquatch and things like those are considered conspiracy theories in some realms. So I just thought that was interesting that we like to go down those holes, those rabbit holes, and that
well,
some
well,
people see them as that way.
well, you bring up Sasquatch, of course, because I mean, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy theory, but people have made it one, or it's become one because so many
Right.
people have encountered something,
Hmm.
and the government and all the powers that be want to tell us no, it doesn't exist. And
Right.
people say it's the same thing with the UFOs, right?
Yeah.
So, and today, I didn't get a lot of time to look over the hearings, but I followed them a little bit leading up.
Hmm.
So they still basically are telling us, oh yeah, there are things we can identify in the sky, which they've been telling us for
Right.
a couple of years now.
Yeah.
But they're still trying to say, but, and NASA still quotes this, we cannot verify that there are alien species out,
Right.
and so it's still there's of course it all comes down to the conspiracy is why is the government hiding information from us? And they, one, probably because most of the world would freak the hell out if they knew the truth.
Well, what is it?
That's
I love the saying in Men in Black, right? Like
mhm.
one person. What is it? One person, many people. Oh shoot! I'm gonna have to look it up. Oh, hold on, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you go ahead and look it up. But yeah, it's it's funny how it
One
becomes
person
that,
is smart.
and there's still going to be conspiracies. They're not going to come out. Again, on top of that, the conspiracy is, or the conspiracy theory currently is, well, why are they telling us this little bit of information,
Mm-hmm.
but not more of it, right? So there's
Right.
always going to be something hiding, and it's kind of fun.
Right.
It's fun.
And I think of the conspiracy theories when people start putting their own twist on, based on experience or something they want, like you said, a belief system, something they want to believe or something from their own context, they start layering onto the lack of information with information they would like it to be or think it might be or something like that. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Okay, a
yeah.
person is
So,
smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals.
oh yeah, yeah. You know what? I think there's a lot to be said for that. When we were young, of course, I've shared my own UFO stories or UAP stories
Mm-hmm.
on my show before, and I was always fascinated by it. And one of them I had when I was in high school in Las Vegas. And Dad used to just always say, I would ask him, right, because he's in the Air
Right.
Force and he worked at Nellis. Dad, are there aliens? And he would just always say to me, if I tell you, I'll have to kill
I have
you.
to kill
That was
you.
always his response. And I was like, wink, wink, Dad. But anyway, so that is a big topic, and I think we can go round and round. And when it comes to something like that, of course, I believe in UAPs. I've had my own experiences, and I can understand why people might not necessarily
Well,
believe or want to believe.
right. And and that's a thing with experiences. And I always think of and conspiracy, but I don't know. See, I don't think of UAPs as I differentiate between a phenomenon
Hmm.
and the stories we build around them.
Yeah,
So the conspiracy theories to me are the stories we build around them. Well, it must be this or it must be that. That, because that's what our brain wants to do, right? It wants to fill in the gaps. And
yeah,
so I can sit and I can believe in the phenomenon of a UAP, but I don't necessarily go the length of making a story up around it,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like with ghosts and things. We've all experienced that, right? Our family, we have a lot of that. It's a phenomenon, but I can't explain it, and I can sit in that inability to explain it.
hmm,
And to me, conspiracy theories are when we start to explain something based on what context or experience that we have.
yeah. Well, I think most of the theories come out of people's beliefs around why the government won't just tell us
Right,
what they are,
right, and
right?
that then you're getting to the conspiracy theory territory. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Like some theories, like for me, I'm like, who cares? I believe they're
yeah,
there. If the government has a reason to keep them from us, I'm sure there's a reason the
right.
government keeps a lot of things from us, Yeah. But I mean, they've actually come a long way in at least acknowledging the fact that people are seeing something that can't be
Mm-hmm.
explained.
Right.
They're and truth be told, not everybody in the government knows the answer to those questions. There are
No.
always people that have answers and those that do not, right?
Yep.
Um but yeah, the couple that I always think of when I think of conspiracy theories, one, I think of flat earthers and people who
Yes.
just are so like, and that one, which to me is utterly ridiculous. Like, I don't want to like make anyone feel bad who watches this show and is a
I
flat
know
earther.
that's my hesitation about talking about this too. It's like I don't want to make anybody feel bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just think they're all the science, all of it shows that the Earth is round. If you've ever flown in an airplane, you can see the shape of the Earth below you. And but what's funny, as a friend recently, she was talking about how she went down this rabbit hole, and this is kind of what made me think, oh, this could be a fun topic. She's like, oh, I went on this comment or this post and I was reading all the people's comments. She's like, oh my gosh. And she said something about, there was a guy on there was like, well, how come when you're flying in an airplane, if you put a level on the ground, it stays level? And that's because that's how they work. I don't know. I'm like, wait,
Because the
What?
plane of the plane is level. Okay.
Yeah. The plane is level to the earth the whole time it's flying, right? Except for when it takes off and lands, but oh my
Right.
gosh. So I don't know. The logic and then their notion, I don't know how many of these, like people who believe that there are boundaries put up, that the government has big walls and you can't go past them. And my reaction was,
What?
which government? Because there's a whole earth full of different government, you know, like
Yeah.
it's, I don't know. That one I just can't I have a hard time finding a respectful place to, to talk about that with someone. It just does, it's so illogical, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do
I
you
remember
know
the
anybody? Do you know
Do I
anyone,
know a flat
Jacqueline?
earther? No.
Yeah.
If I do, they haven't told me.
Okay. Yeah.
They probably know better.
I I have, since I've moved to Idaho, I've met one or two people that kind of toss around the idea. And I just, it baffles my mind. But anyway,
They're
the
in
other
circles.
one that I think about a lot, which I think, these are kind of classic ones, is the whole
Mhm.
idea about uh that we never actually traveled to the moon, that it was all a
Yep, I was
hoax.
just the loon. That was one of the top ones on the site that I found. The moon landing was fake. I have
Yeah.
run into people and had conversations, not recently, but had conversations about that, where they're like, but then, and then I'm like, no, I'm like, okay,
Yeah. I mean, I think with that one, I could handle having a conversation for a little while around it. I mean,
yeah,
there are definitely plausible notions that there could have been a reason they faked it, when someone says, "Oh, they really wanted to get ahead of the, the game and be the first ones to the moon and blah blah blah." I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that that could be a thing. Um, but it doesn't make any sense at this point in the game. And when you have the astronauts themselves who,
mhm.
share mind-blowing experiences about where they've been, um, and the thing with pictures too, like a lot of people
Pictures of
share
the earth. Yeah,
pictures,
exactly.
right? But
Yeah,
those can be altered. Like, who really has their hands on original pictures and people go back? I don't know. I don't know. It is an interesting one, and I'm wondering if anyone who watches this later or tonight uh actually believes any of these conspiracy theories.
there
I
is.
don't really know. Uh I don't know. That one is, it's kind of interesting. And people, there's more science. That one can be more of a conversation for me than flat earthing. Like,
Yeah,
flat earthers just make me want to laugh out loud,
it's like,
right?
really,
All right.
one that made me think of it. Remember when the 9/11, there was a whole conspiracy around the fact that somebody tried to say that no plane hit the Pentagon.
Oh
Although you and
yeah.
I know that's not the truth, because our uncle was on the other side of it, on the opposite side when it hit, and was there that day, and so he had stories himself. Um,
Yeah.
but there was, and I remember reading about somebody was trying to get all the look at the pictures, and it couldn't have, and all this kind of stuff. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, so yeah, and I actually saw something about the other day. There was a picture of some guy who took a selfie at the top of the World Trade Center, and they totally proved that it wasn't, that was taken like some years ago, somewhere halfway across the world. And um, the idea that bombs were planted there ahead of time, that it was all this stuff
Mhm.
was planned. So um, yeah, I have heard that one. Not so much, mostly just because as I was like researching stuff like you are, I came across certain ones and I was like, oh, really? This is
Yeah.
even a thing, you know? Um, but that picture apparently circulated. And so all it takes is one person to put a fake picture out there and
Mhm. Well,
and
that's
get the
what makes
world.
it scary about AI coming out, right? That it makes it even easier to do that, and to fake
Oh,
people talking and all that kind of thing. So
oh, for
we need
sure.
to up
For
our game.
sure. Well, and I'm sure
Oh, so
there's all
this is,
sorts of conspiracy theories around AI coming out right now, like,
oh yeah,
you know, right? Like,
uh
I
huh.
don't know.
Oh my gosh. No, the one that struck me when I was going through this list was The Denver International Airport is the Illuminati's headquarters. I had never heard that one before. I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, you know what? I actually have heard that one before. I
Yeah.
think because Noah, when he was younger, he was he was fascinated by the ridiculousness of the notion of the Illuminati, right?
Okay.
And or whatever. And you know what? There's another thing. There probably is some underground organization like the Illuminati that exists, whether they're as powerful as the world as people want to give them. You know, like there's
Right.
always a grain of truth. There's always a grain of truth to something, right? Because you
Yes.
could
Yep.
take it and then you do with it what you will.
Yep.
But I have heard that one. I'm trying to think. Oh gosh, I should have checked in with Noah because he used to share those theories about the Illuminati all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And about the different people who were involved. But then again, you know, think of how many things do happen under our noses, like, you know, the Epstein situation and how many people were a part of that nasty criminal stuff. And, you know, like people, there are things going on that we don't want to know about. We don't know
Right.
about.
So we're not in those circles, so we're not exposed to them. Yeah.
So going back to the whole UFO thing, one of my favorites is that Mark Zuckerberg is a reptilian alien. And that one's been around for years. And I mean,
just mean.
I think it's awesome. I don't know where it came from, but people, this is all over the place.
Yeah, I wouldn't have remembered hearing that, but yeah, I have heard that before too, and it just
yeah. But heck, who's to say he's not? Like, there's a part of me that believes it's really possible that there are aliens walking among us already, and we don't know. And I guess because I'm always willing to dabble in possibility. I mean, probability is a thing, of course, right? But
yeah,
it's possible. I believe it's completely
Okay.
egotistical of us, of course, to consider or pretend that we're the only living intelligent species in all of the galaxies and, you know, around the universe.
All hiding from us.
So
because they're like, I'm not getting into that mess.
What? You don't know. Don't you ever walk around the street and go, hey, he might be an alien? You don't ever do that, Jacqueline? What?
Yeah. Not my thing.
I don't really do that. But I do consider it within the realm of possibility.
Oh yeah, yeah. But again, phenomenon versus conspiracy theory. Like, I'm totally open to that being to that being possible, but I don't go down a, you know, going, I don't build the story around it, but I'm totally into the phenomenon of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think to your point, it is about the story. It's that going, like you said, going back to belief systems, you know, or a belief that we have, and then when we build stories around them and oftentimes use them to our advantage or to what's the word I'm looking for, to disagree or to, you know, put down the government, you know, the government's hiding this, let's make up another thing the government hides from us every day. Or, but you know, it's really weird. I started thinking about that and like the beliefs and the things. I bet Jesus in his time felt like a conspiracy theory to people.
Oh, yeah, quite possibly.
It's right? Like, I don't know. I just had this thought. When you think,
or I wonder if people were just more easily, I mean, you have philosophers back then. It's like, I'm always curious to go back there because I actually read a book about like he was a Muslim, Resma. What's his name? Can't remember the author right now, but he's one of many, but he's Muslim, married to a Christian. And he wrote a book about like the history, just went through the history. And Jesus did live, and he is in that's several, you know, historians have gone there. There was a guy named Jesus that was, you know, arrested by the Romans, and, you know, there's recording of it. But I always wonder, were people less questioning then, or, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like people weren't we always like to that egotistical thing. We're smarter than they were back in the day, but I don't know. I
Well,
can't say that we are.
don't you think claiming people who claimed him to be the king of the Jews and that whole notion, wouldn't that kind of fall into that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Right?
the cult too. Well, that people will say as well that cults are
Yeah.
built on that. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I don't know.
I got to get my head around this one.
No.
Um,
Well, that's why I thought of bringing it up to you, because it just came to my head, like how, and that whole idea of a belief versus conspiracy theories. And I
right,
knew that you
right.
would do a great job of kind of articulating where my mind was already going. You're always good about that for me. Like, oh yeah, that's what I mean. I'm just not saying it very well. Um, oh
Huh.
wait, here, Jonas has one. This is actually a
Okay.
good conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Mattress stores are headquarters where theorists meet and coordinate on how to use AI for global domination. Think about it. On
He
every
just made that
corner,
one up, didn't he? He just made that one up.
he did. On every corner, always empty, always commercials with hidden messages, and most people only buy 2 or 3 new ones in their whole life. Why else are there so many entry mattress stores and with such an ad budget? Either that or they're like laundering for drug cartels, right? But you know what? The
I
map.
don't
So
know.
he
I
did
can kind
make
of go
this
for that
version
one.
up.
There you go.
He made this one up, but to his point, there is a conspiracy theory about the fact that all mattress stores are a front for some other criminal activity,
Right.
because there's so many of them. And like you said, how many times in your life do you actually buy a mattress?
Every 10 to 15 years, I believe.
I'm
That's what's
just
recommended
saying.
anyway.
That's a good one though. I think
Yeah,
that's
that
a
was
great
good.
theory.
I like that, Jonas. I'm gonna clam on that one. Clam on that one.
Very clever. I know that I kind of like the whole idea about using AI for global domination,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. It's it could happen. That could happen if and I think it just to me the only defense is awareness, right? And critical thinking and being able to stop and go, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
But not
kind of fun
everybody's
to,
brains work that way.
you know what? Why do people's brain work in a way that make them want to believe the Earth is flat? Like I just,
That is beyond. I really don't. I don't know.
there, there's just
Well,
no, I don't know.
well, it has to do with the five fears and things that we need, right? So we need to have some sense of significance. We need to have a sense of certainty. We need a sense of these are all the social fear things that can become fears, right? Um, Autonomy, having agency or autonomy, relationship, relatedness, or how we relate to people, and then fairness. So in any of those categories, our brains can kind of, when something's missing or something's moved in those sections, right? We immediately we react in our brains like we would to like a physical threat. So if our significance is threatened, if our certainty is threatened, and certainty is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think especially around certainty, if we're not certain about something, we create the story to be certain about it. Right?
Okay.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
that
So that's
totally
how our
makes
brain
sense.
works.
So it really serves a purpose on just to, what if I'm hearing all that right? Like it's serving a purpose on an individual level, right? That's why
Yeah.
they find that. Do you think that it serves? What kind of purpose does it serve on a global or even a community level?
Same thing.
When
Because
same thing.
if a community, so then you get into the relatedness piece, right? So if you find people who believe the same thing that you do in a space, it creates a social dynamic and a social cohesion that people look for that makes them feel related, and what was the other one I said? That relate depends on kind of because we all clamor for each one differently. Like we want all of them, but some of them we need more than others.
Yeah.
So if we have relatedness and certainty because we together believe this thing, that's kind of where it goes.
Yeah. Well, and I
On the
feel like
social
there's so
media
many
level.
more. I mean, obviously we touched
Oh
on
yeah.
a couple of those that have been around for decades and decades, but with social media and just the need for that to relate, to connect, these and people create ideas, even if they come from a place of, oh, I know this isn't true, but if I can get people to get on board with me, it's
Mm-hmm.
something, right?
Right. Right.
So
Well, it's
like
a point of
even
influence.
silly ones like Mark Zuckerberg is a reptilian. I mean, I would venture a guess that some, 14, 15-year-old thought that was really funny. But people have gotten on board with it. People are like, "Oh,
Right.
this is really possible." And he, and people don't like him, so it's easy to consider that he might be a reptilian. And the notion of reptilian aliens
Mm-hmm.
is that there's good aliens and bad aliens.
Yeah.
Reptilians aren't necessarily the good aliens. So that's
Right.
where
Well, if you've watched Land of the Lost, you would know that that is true.
I know, right? So that's yeah, but it's fascinating too when you start like thinking about. I mean, some of the government ones are they make sense because that comes from a
Right.
lot from a place of
Because
fear.
everybody's afraid, to some degree, people are always like the government, right? So
Oh yeah,
the
it's
one,
always the
it's
government,
always
but
the government.
who else are we going to blame,
I
right?
just I'm scrolling through here, Lauren, and I'm thinking, and I came upon, I think the one that I got on board with when I was younger was the Loch Ness monster.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
I was totally onto that. I was like, that's a dinosaur that kept living in the depths, and I'm
yeah.
totally on board
Well,
with that one.
and you know what? It's become science. I mean, just like Sasquatch and UAPs, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah,
people have it, and I believe that's. But let's talk about Loch Ness. So what you said you kind of grabbed on. What do you think it is?
I was just fascinated. I think it was plenty. I don't Planosaurus. I think.
Yeah,
Remember
Platosaurus. Yeah.
remember our uncle had all the little dinosaurs in the basement at Nana's
Mm-hmm.
house, and there was the blue one. I think it was blue, and it had the flappy things and the
Mm-hmm.
long neck. And I went, "That's what that is."
Yeah, Platosaur.
It was like one of the very last ones. It's kind of like the last dragon. Like dragons were around until they just weren't anymore or something, and it was
Yeah.
just Planiosaurus. I think it was called.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was that became my theory.
No, yeah, that one resonates with me too. And because I read something one time or watched a documentary about uh uh there being like, all the waterways throughout the world for the most part
Mm-hmm.
are connected in some way or
Yeah.
another, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there being tunnels essentially, so there's, and people are like, well, why don't you see it all the time, or why, isn't this happening? But yeah, I think that's a really possible notion. I mean, when we think about the depths of the ocean and
Mm-hmm.
the water, the fact
And
that
what we
water
have not
can.
been able to explore yet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's certainly things living in the deep ocean that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly aliens. So,
Possibly, like in the abyss. They're way down there because they have the technology to withstand the pressure.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's been a couple. I watched the thing, and speaking of these Navy guys that are coming forward, there was a Navy shipman who got locked out when these sirens went, and they were always told, when these sirens go off, you get inside, we lock up, you don't go outside on the ship. And he got locked out, and he witnessed or claimed to witness a huge ship come out of the water and fly off into outer space. I know,
That
right?
is so
Like,
cool.
and it is cool. And I mean, what, I don't know who, I don't know. I just believe people. I believe people because I think
Yeah,
they believe,
yeah.
and that kind of is interesting. But even the Loch Ness thing too. A lot, there's other theories which kind of are similar to the ones about Sasquatch. When you go back to that, all sorts of theories. And even, in the Sasquatch world, of course, you have the people that believe that they are just biological creatures that live on this earth that we
Mhm.
just haven't fully discovered yet, right? That may be more intelligent than we are. But there's also, that there's other theories about Loch Ness um, that there's just kind of like rips in the time space continuum, or like parallel, things, it comes in and out. A lot of people
Mhm.
claim that for with Sasquatch too, that, well, maybe we just don't see them all the time because they can travel between this and another world.
Right.
um and and when you use the word conspiracy, it's not like people are trying to use that, but it feels like conspiracy because most of us believe there are people out there that know more about these things than we are allowed to know about. That's also
Right.
where that comes from, right?
Yep.
Like, somebody
That's the
knows.
significance
Somebody,
piece. Yeah. You're giving someone significance.
yeah. But yeah, Loch Ness is a great one. And still, I mean, people are exploring that, and to this day going out with scientific investigations and all sorts of things trying to gather evidence. And that's because so many people have had an experience that
Mhm.
cannot be yet explained, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I guess when you think about people traveling to the moon, when you think about, like, from a developmental perspective, right? As a 4-year-old, your parent tries to tell you about an experience that they have. It's very foreign. Like, it's hard to grasp onto that.
Yeah.
So like what are you talking about? So, when we're good, trusting people, healthy people, for the most part, most of us are. But I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that the fact that they have not been able to do it themselves makes it absolutely impossible for them to believe that anybody could.
Right. There's like literally have no context for it. Like we know that we learn better when we have context. So, and you probably learned this in your schooling for with young kids, but it's
Hmm.
true, in the schooling, like teachers now will talk about something so you have a context for what you're going to read about, or otherwise you have nothing, you don't have any neural pathways for that stuff to stick to unless you started them, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's the whole science and argument and everything behind play-based learning, is
Right.
that you watch you watch a child play, and you help them draw connections from that, right?
Right.
And but for most of us, and it's funny that you bring that up, because I've always joked about how I judge people on whether or not they probably had a good preschool experience or not, right? Like,
Our
but
formative years are very telling. Yes.
yeah, no, they really,
They
really
really
are. And I
are.
think
Yeah.
that for some people, the inability to even create some context or use the videos and the things that are provided with them to them to create context,
Mhm.
and they still can't do it because
Yeah.
their brains have lost the ability to make connections in all these different ways, right? So,
Right.
well, I've never been to the moon, so I can't. I Nobody can, like this. But it's all that is really formulated and created and optimized in the early years, and there's a lot of things we can't do now because we didn't practice them when we were 4,
Poor. That's right.
right?
Like language. Yeah. Just think of like language itself, right? If you
uh,
learn languages,
oh
it's
yeah,
easier to learn languages when those our neural pathways are exploding and expanding.
yeah. But it's really fascinating when you get into how the brain works on things like this, and why
Mhm.
people grab on, right?
Why
To
people grab
why
on
any of
things.
us grab onto the things that we
Yeah,
do.
the science of the brain is just going to really, and even like we talked to mom and she's like, well, we had no idea about that 20, 40 years ago. Just the
Hmm.
exponential exploration of the brain now and understanding how all this stuff works. And kind of, it's interesting because from a psychology perspective, what we've worked with behavioral psychology, and then some of that's being proven out and some of it's being weeded out, right, about how that works. Now we understand why behavioral therapy works and things like that, because it's you're creating pathways and
Yeah,
things like that,
yeah.
the
Well, and
stickiness.
you're creating optimal opportunities to explore that
Yeah.
in real time, right?
Mhm.
Because and it's all science, and it's but um So, but then, you know, if we're moving, we're learning more about the brain. It's kind of like, what's going to be the next conspiracy theory? What do you think?
Right.
Right?
Huh.
What's that going to be?
What will the
There's,
next conspiracy theory be?
I don't know. There's one, oh, it was just on the tip of my tongue. It had to do with like celebrities and who they really are. I came across it and now I should have written it down, but it's just really funny. Like, but I mean, a lot of people think, oh, there's a lot of reptilians, right? Like we talked about Mark Zuckerberg being a reptilian. But people think a lot of famous people, a lot of presidents, you know, are different.
Well, they play off that in Men in Black, right? That the people
Yeah,
who make it and are the celebrities are they're there's some other their otherness. They're
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
or
Well, what's funny
seeming.
about that, earlier we were joking about this and about aliens and angels, like what are aliens, right? These are also
Mhm.
different. And this is where I actually came up with the thought about, well, belief systems, because there's a lot of people that believe that what we have come to understand as angels, things that appear to us, things that send us messages, are actually just an alien species in some light galaxy far away, you know,
Right, and it just
that, and
depends
there
on
are
your
people that believe,
context. Yeah,
yeah, and
depends on your
we're their
context, how
science
they look, what you
experiment.
call them. Yeah, that's the interest that age. Yeah, because I was on for that one when you did that, and that was kind of fascinated because it's really because I'm really into like this whole concept of social construction.
Hmm.
And so, what are bringing our experience to something and into a group, and you talking, that social piece. What am I trying to say? Uh, just social, how we just are how we create based on our experience and our context and our language. Like, I think you can think of like the different religions are languages built around belief systems, but if you can get to the thing beyond the language, there's so much that is similar, right? Am I explaining it right?
Yeah,
Like, and so yeah, it's just, and so I think about conspiracy theories in that, right? That social construction piece. If you get people, and the fact that on social media, people can connect where, if you think about in the, before the internet, someone would be in a town and there'd be like one person who thought something a certain, thought kind of out on the outskirts of something. But now
hmm,
all of those people in all of those towns can get together and go, okay, I'm not crazy because there's me in all those other towns, and we've just created a community of people who believe kind of the same thing, or think the same way, or whatever you want to call it, right? So they
yeah,
build their own community, and then that can become, and I always think of conspiracies are to your point earlier, there's always an ounce of truth, a speck of truth to them. But in science, we look at the bell curve. And
hmm,
so conspiracies, I always feel like, are built around the edges, like the things that are kind of on the outskirts. They're not the norm.
yeah,
They're not the middle of the bell curve, or whatever that percentage. They kind of like, they're the outliers that get
yeah,
stories built around them, right?
hmm.
Yeah. And
Well,
so
and it's,
that kind of goes along with like the one person in town who had an experience. It's not even that they think differently. They just had an experience that nobody else had. And all of a
hmm,
sudden they meet, oh, all these other people had this experience. Um, what was it that I remember reading? I've read a couple of books on people who have had like either like alien experiences, or
hmm,
near death experiences and things like that. And those are fascinating to me, and people like to build conspiracy theories around those too, because it's that unknown, it's that fear of the unknown, and so our brain wants to go, I need to make up a story so I'm not scared of it anymore.
yeah. Well, it's funny that you bring up near death experiences. I watch a YouTube channel where they have people all the time. And what's so intriguing about it, and this is part of, I think this would probably be considered a conspiracy theory, is the idea that, of course, that you're not really experiencing anything, right? Your
Hmm.
brain is firing and telling you to believe this and that and the other thing. And I think the argument on that side is that you can have a lot of people tell these near death experiences, and they all have really real similarities to them, of course, but they also have real differences. It's kind of like, um, the one person has Mary come during, the mother of Jesus comes to her in her, whatever, and
Mhm.
it's rooted in her belief system already. So
Right.
it makes
Yep.
sense. That makes sense to me. Like, I don't agree that it didn't really happen. It was just in her brain. I believe that we are presented with things, of course, the way we will best understand them, and we
Right.
can take them with us. But the
Well,
conspiracy there is, oh, it's just your brain and the information you already have in there, right? That's the
right.
theory that
Well, it's
people
like
like to.
Contact, right?
Oh
The
yeah,
and when what's the show, the cartoon in
I
in
don't remember. I haven't
it's
seen
like
that movie in a
they
long
get to the
time.
end of the movie and it's their goddamn father.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because they that's they were presented with something that their brain could grasp. Because and going back to aliens and things, like it being around us, we just don't see them because our brain has no capacity to interpret that. You know what I
Oh
mean? We
yeah.
could be even the explorers through, you know, big telescopes and things like that. The science, NASA could be bumping up against things, and just we don't have the lens to interpret or understand or even, begin to consider.
Yeah.
It's like a big miss when it comes to, our lens is going this way and this lens is here, and there's just
Which
it's
which makes
impossible.
complete sense, right?
Yeah.
When our conversations always circle back to just basic development of the human being.
Hmm.
That's how the brain develops. You go, you you just don't notice the things that don't, well, they aren't meaningful to you or purposeful or anything yet, or your brain just can't process it. So that's how our brain protects us also,
Right.
is
Yep.
from that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure we see things all the time. And I think that actually, uh, you know, going back to weird supernatural phenomenon is why some people see stuff and other people don't,
Yeah.
because some people are
Our
ready,
brains are open.
and
Yep.
they're ready to do it and see it, and maybe try to interpret it in a meaningful way, and other people just aren't. Because there are certainly situations, of course, where people can be in the same room, in the same forest, in the same whatever, and three or four people will see it and two more won't. It's
Right.
right there in front of you. Why aren't you seeing this? So um yeah,
Well, even
it's just real. I mean, it
thinking
all
about
comes down to just the fascinating way the brain works.
right, and well, then, and you saw it like in Timothy Leary's LSD stuff, right? Like
Hmm.
they opened a whole new brand of psychology around transpersonal psychology, because people were having experiences that they couldn't explain, that their psyche was not prepared for. And so, and it's because it was such a just a break, right?
Yeah.
And caused things beyond behavioral science that really freaked everybody out, and
Yeah.
they needed to look at it differently,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's one thing when someone says, "Oh, I died and my life flashed before my eyes," because
Mm-hmm.
your life, you've experienced it. But
Yep.
when people go into those kind of states, those drug-induced states and things, and they're experiencing things that terrify them, things that don't make sense to anybody else, there's no real logical reason that they should be thinking those things, because they
Right.
don't have it in their context. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am so and going back to the whole government thing, I mean, people have known for years that the government has done all sorts of testing, and you still to this day, a lot of people believe anyway, that they use LSD and other, similar drugs to create some understanding around some of this stuff. Or
Right.
like they use remote viewing, they use psychics to hone in on
Hmm.
the, you know, enemy's territory and try to get people to help them with that. So there's a reason that a lot of people get their panties in a bunch about why does the government hide all these things from us, because we know they know
Because
a
the
lot of
person
stuff.
is smart and people are stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I in that transpersonal space is the concept of collective consciousness, and
Hmm.
that's what we're tapping into. And I don't think of that as a conspiracy theory. I think that as, again, like a possibility you were talking about, a phenomenon that's a very possible. And the more I've recently gotten my a certification in mindfulness, and meditating, and when we recognize that our thoughts are kind of not ours, and my through my years of yoga practice, and I'll have a thought that will come through my brain, and all of a sudden I see it pop up, and some people run with it, tend to run with it, and whereas for me it just kind of came through, and I'm like, okay. But then all of a sudden it'll be popping up, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
I
it's
think
really wild.
that happens. Jonas and I have that conversation all the time. Like we about, gosh, I thought of that. I feel like I'm just giving ideas to the world. Like, it probably
But they're
wasn't
not
even my
ours.
idea.
Yeah.
I just heard it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really true. It's funny how like the idea of conspiracy theory, and like it's only conspiracy like to people who interpret it as such, right? Flat
Right.
earthers don't think that that's a conspiracy theory, right?
Right.
But people who
It's
don't believe it is. People,
right.
people who, I mean, but then there's other ones like I think the walking on the, or the whether we walked on the moon. I think that one is a little different, um, but still for the most part, I mean, I guess their idea is, what's the conspiracy? The government's, hanging over our heads. Why are they doing this? But I don't know. It's just kind of fun to think about, like, where people, and you and I have had these conversations enough times. Like, human behavior just fascinates me. Why people
Yeah.
do what they do, why our brain works the way it works, and why people believe the things or don't believe the things they do. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that listen to me on this show and are like, she's fucking lunatic. That's not, Sasquatch are not alien beings that can cloak and have telepathy. Yes, they are, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of fun, and I think you have to
Don't know
be
for
able
sure,
to.
but it's totally possible. Right.
Right, absolutely, and that's the thing for me. Like, believing, right? I just recognize it as it makes sense to me. And there's certain things, but I just, like, I keep going back to the flat earth thing, because I'm like, what have you seen or read that make sense to you? Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That,
like,
because
I
like the
think that,
evidence is so strongly not in their favor,
yeah.
that that right, like something about Sasquatch or something like that, there's still a lot of unknown around that, right?
Yeah.
So there's possibility, like, and with ghosts and those kinds of things, there's still just unknowns and experiences without the science or the evidence to conf, conf, refute it, right?
Hmm.
There's nothing. Whereas the evidence to refute flat Earth is like, I thought this was a middle age thing. It's just like, let's
But what's
believe
even
flat Earth
funny,
because, yeah,
it is to call that like a government conspiracy, and like, but it was the Middle Ages when they discovered that the Earth was round
round,
and did
right?
all of that. And what would be the purpose back then? Like, really, for those people to come out and share that science? They
Well, and it was
they probably.
squelched for a while too, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Oh,
it was like,
totally.
that
It
can't
was.
be, that can't be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and I get back then that people might have been confused, because you only know
yeah,
what you know up the street, right? Their world
right.
was like a
It
five
was
mile
like this big.
radius.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they didn't know anything else, but geez, we know a lot more today. We fly in airplanes. We've been to outer space.
Spaceships and yeah.
Yeah, and boats. Like, well, and even then, I mean, you can see, on a ship, people have been doing that for, for
Yeah.
centuries. It
Centuries, yeah.
just, it's, I don't know. I don't know if I could have a conversation. I'm reading that book about, oh, I never thought of it that way that I shared.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, and it's actually a great book. I'm almost finished with it, and I found out a friend of ours knows her.
Oh,
Kelly's friend Brianna knows the author of that book. But this is one of those things I don't think I could suspend judgment on. If someone
no,
started
right,
trying to convince me. Like,
right.
I don't know. That's
And I
yeah.
think that might be another part of the definition for me for conspiracy theory. It's people believing things for which there's evidence to refute.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily put like UAPs or something. Again, those are phenomenons that we haven't
Mm-hmm.
figured out. But
Yeah.
when there's evidence against something, or something is pieced together in such a way that it's like, you're really stretching to
So
like put things together.
so
Yeah.
where does Mark Zuckerberg as a reptilian fall into that?
That's
Is
just,
there
I
information to
like
refute?
your idea that some kid thought it was a funny, and then somebody went, "Oh, that's possible." I'm like, I don't. Yeah, yeah.
But you know what?
I'm not.
There's no evidence to refute it yet, though, right? Like,
Well,
it
except
could
that he
be.
doesn't look. I mean, where does it come from that he is? Right? I don't.
I don't know. It probably comes from a movie. I don't even really know the source of that theory.
Okay.
But you watch movies
Because that,
and
yeah, if somebody explained to me why that was, I just know that, that's all I've heard of it, right? That he's a reptilian.
yeah,
I'm like, well, what does that
I'll
mean?
have to go
And
find
how do
more
you
of it.
know?
Yeah. You know what? We should ask Noah. Noah will
Okay.
know.
Noah will know.
It might have even been Noah who started the rumor.
Oh, I got a text from him today, by the way, to wish me a happy
Oh,
birthday. I
good.
thought that was lovely. Yeah.
Nice.
And my niece as well.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been really fun. We could go on. I mean,
I know.
and I love that. I knew that you would bring a really cool angle in on this, Jacqueline, just because of all the work that you've done on psychology and how the brain works and all of that. And I think that's really fascinating. And I think part of it too just helps you kind of take all of it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, except for the flat earthing thing. That lives in a world of its own. But all the rest of them, right? We can figure out that there's reasons people need and want to believe the things that they believe. And I think that's a really fascinating thing too, because that's one of the angles I've mentioned on here before with my paranormal investigating is taking with people, is that we each experience things on a very personal level and for very personal reasons. And sometimes going in and interacting with someone who's having stuff go on that they don't understand, we can get at the heart of some of that stuff that's going on in their heart and their mind.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's not happening, but there's a reason they're experiencing it and nobody else is, right? So,
right. Well, it's like you think about, like exalted experiences that people can't explain to other people, because if we haven't had the experience, it's hard to connect and have context to have the conversation about it.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason I love doing this, because I love to give people permission to talk about things that are hard for them, right?
Yeah.
And to share experiences that nobody else wants to listen to. So yeah.
And I support that. Mwah.
Thank you, my sweet
this
sister,
has been
for
a
coming
fun
on
birthday.
with me. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, okay?
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
Think I'm this close to bedtime, so we're good.
Oh, that's right. You're a little later in the time than me.
Yep.
I still have to go eat dinner. All right. I love you.
Love you.
All right. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening later on, watching later. Just had my sister Jacqueline on. We chatted about conspiracy theories and how the brain works around those things, and it was super fun. If you enjoyed watching this, please share it, like, follow. I'm on YouTube and obviously here on Facebook most Wednesdays. But thank you. Be well, everybody.